with myself, Brendan Barnes, and my other awesome nerd, Nathan Taylor. Today, our special guest is Phelim Rowe, who is a director in MSS. And so, Nathan, why don't you kick us off? How we brought Pelham here, and what we can do and bring his insights and knowledge to our crazy show.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Excited to have Phelim with us today. He runs the MSS network, which is I'll let him explain it more, but he looped me in probably 2, 3, 4 years ago to start presenting on some of his events. He has a lot of events around the world, and I have the privilege of virtually presenting on various topics with him, and I just enjoyed being a part of those conversations. And there's some upcoming events in person here in Colorado and Phoenix and across the states that I want him to be able to plug a little bit. But mostly I want to just get to know what he's doing a little bit more. So, Belim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, thanks very much. That's very kind, and it's been lovely to have you on the various events over the years, in person and virtually. What we're trying to achieve is, I suppose, a bit of a cliche, breaking down barriers, but specific barriers where stakeholders usually don't meet each other. And what I'm talking about is the combination of an end customer, MSP, and MSSP community. And I'm fully aware that there is a place for separate events, for separate functions, separate people. I know. And I know at some of the MSP focused events, for example, they don't like having end customers in the room because the entire event is about how to sell and what to price and all of that. And I think that's old hat because guess what? The end customer will find out if they really want to. And I'm including the enterprise level MSSP as well because they can often find a route to market through the SMB MSP. And I think that trifecta combination is an important one.
I agree. I think the conversation ended up being very interesting with the various people you have on because you'll have a panel with like an enterprise industry consultant who has a very different perspective, along with a technician who's maybe working for an MSP and has their fingers in the mud, and then like a director of IT for an enterprise. So you've got three different parts of the space in one panel, and you get some really interesting conversations from it. Um, you mentioned earlier in our kind of pre-show, you were describing yourself as a barista, and I think it's a really interesting statement. So why don't you share a little bit more about what that means in your mind?
So I organize events, and traditionally, event organizers haven't really commented. They just orchestrate, they assemble, they invite, they do analytics on different topics. One of the key skills of being a conference producer is to ask a question behind a question behind a question. So let's say if I said, "What's keeping you up at night?" and you said, "Everything's too expensive." I go, "Okay, but is that a solvable problem?" And you go, "Well, no." Okay, so apart from the unsolvable, what's solvable? You know what I mean? That type of approach. But what I've discovered is there is a place for asking better questions. And if you ask better questions, then you get to run things like podcasts and panels, and you end up injecting a little bit of yourself into everything. So I liken it to the barista at a coffee shop. I'm orchestrating the environment, I'm observing everything, but here's the pinch: people don't like it when they realize I've been noticing stuff.
So,
Yeah.
Pelham, I have a question. I'm this is our first time meeting, and I'm really intrigued. So, I'm kind of likening. I like the word likening. I'm going to steal that from you real quick, but I think that originally that's what this whole podcast was about, right? Is bringing business users and trying to lighten up the load. So I really try and break it down for a business user that they're not speaking tech geek speak all the time. And so even when Nathan's going on and he's super, knowledgeable about Microsoft, and we're going down like, okay, let me break this down for a basic user. I was intrigued. So, how can you explain to me how you actually would tie in your MSSP with the enterprise level in customers and really like be able to go through the SMB MSP?
Yeah. So that is a good question. And there are enterprise level MSSPs who have said specifically in the past, exclude MSPs. We don't like them. They don't
Microsoft
know
says,
anything. Yeah.
yeah,
And I don't appreciate that. Yeah, sure, I'm going to do an event just for the enterprise people to hang out with themselves. That's cool. But I think the trifecta need to come together, because
Hmm.
if the MSP can see what an enterprise level MSSP is doing, then perhaps there's something they can white label at a lower cost for a wider client base.
right.
That's one possibility. Equally, we deal with this notion that one SaaS product and now you're an MSSP, which of course some of the larger evangelical MSSPs do not like. And then why do we bring in the end customer? Because we're doing a bit of market research. There is a bit of a joke, and I know this is like, again, I'm the barista. I'm not supposed to notice things. What's missing from channel events? The answer is,
The customer.
It's the customer. Yeah.
well, there is that, but there's an even bigger joke. An even bigger joke. The channel. Channel events. They say, I'm an event for the channel. You go there and you're like, where's the MSPs in this event? And where are the VARs? It's just vendors. And I've observed events here and in the States where literally it's a room full of vendors going on stage to pitch a room full of
Hmm.
vendors, and they go back and sit down, and the other one comes up and they pitch each other.
Mm.
And I believe that, yes, there is something wrong with that, but fundamentally, why it's happening is these types of events have not considered that MSPs are mercantile. They need to get out of bed for something. It's not
Right.
enough
Hmm.
to go, yo, 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 this is about MSPs. And you're an MSP, so like, that'll do, won't it? No, that approach is lazy and it doesn't work. Unless it's an RMM event where you're like, you're tied into my RMM, and so you're going to buy my stuff anyway, so come and learn what you're going to buy. If it's an event that is more general, what is missing is the end customer. And yeah, you're not going to pick up loads of customers at the event, but you can do market research. And I think that's the key.
Yeah. I think a lot of our space ends up being echo chambers, right? Where we're talking to our peers. We're doing the same thing as us, and you get into these moments where there's just a lot of, hey, you're like me. Let's talk about things we both think about, but like we don't realize when we're kind of missing the two or three other players in our space. Let me step back just a hair, and let's talk about some terms you've thrown out, and kind of ask you to define some of them, because I think it's interesting to get your perspective on what does that mean. So define enterprise for me. What do you see that as?
Like NASDAQ 250, NASDAQ 500. Um, but
Sure.
having said that, there are some very, very powerful companies that are very small,
Yeah.
but they have a very high market cap.
So would you
Yeah.
call
So it seems like,
sorry, would you call enterprise like over a certain employee count, or would you call it more earnings?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
yeah, it's interesting to think about. So then define two other terms for me. Define MSP and MSSP.
Okay, so fundamentally, and this is where people will disagree. The MSP was set up by either somebody who had a background in IT and they thought, you know what, I can do this. This is easy. For some other people, it's expensive, but I can spin this up and I can do this. But the other type of person, and it's frequent, is someone that would have sold ice cream, but they decided that there's money in IT, so they bought a fledgling company and they spun it up. Um, but the enterprise level MSSP is people who have gone and they have been script kiddies, they have been uh, cybersecurity focused their entire lives. In fact, they might do it, you know, I'm not going to say even if they weren't paid for it, but like that's their vocation.
Sure. It's their hobby. Yeah.
It's what they do. And so their vision is you need the sock, the knock, the rock, the everything and you need all of the tools and you need all of the stack. There's no minimum stack. No, it's the maximum stack. Um, and so for me, those are two different kettles of fish. But of course, marketers are quick to act and they're quick to dangle a carrot to say, my SaaS solution will turn you into an
Yes.
MSSP. But then who am I to argue if you suddenly are offering a security service?
Hmm. That's a great call out. So MSP stands for Managed Service Provider, and I tend to agree with you that that's traditional IT outsourced, right? Often very much small business focused. I think the majority of the MSP space is 5 to 15 person firms serving 5 to 75 person companies. That's a lot of the market. Now there's outliers, there's companies like Brandon's and mine that are moving up market, are doing 250, 350, 500, 1,000 person customers. That kind of what we call in our space, we call it the mid market. Maybe the SMB ends at 150 users, and that 150 to 2,500 is this mid market that some of us are dangling our feet in. And then the MSSP is managed security service provider, and they tend to be less focused on a market segment, but more on, like you said, I feel like their real skill set is the tool sets they're offering, which, like you said, is a SOC, SIM, some of these security tool sets. But I also love how you called out that oftentimes they have the people, they have the security wonks, the nerds who really like to go threat hunting and digging into incident response and security hardening.
And they have an odd brag. They have a humble brag that they like to use. And I don't know if you've heard this. They go, I got a deep bench. And I don't know if
Yes.
that analogy works, because I don't know, apart from someone in the defense industrial complex, a company that would have the money to, on staff, have very high value employees sitting there waiting to do something. I think it's much more likely that they have them, but they are working on something, and in good time, they may, given the right circumstance, work for you. But that's a phrase that I hear quite often.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of complicated dynamics in that space. Like you said, there's a lot of small MSPs that, like you said, come with varying amounts of technical experience, and they want to throw that SaaS solution. Hey, I bought the best whiz bang SOC SIM solution. It comes with some technicians on their end. That solution includes some staffing where their guys are looking at the incident. So I have some of that higher end staff, and hey, we're now an MSSP. I added an S to my name, and now look at me. And I've always felt like that was something I thought was concerning because, so like you said, staffing an MSSP, if you are truly a security wonk, you have experience doing incident response, threat hunting. Those deep security experience guys can make a ton of money in this space, maybe double what a high-end technical engineer can make, right? They're hard to find, they're hard to retain. And so I think it's very interesting if you want to move into that space, how deeply you are in that space. Are you a poser or are you really in there? But if you're in there, then it's a different business model. I am of the opinion that I think we need both because I think it's hard to be good at all the things. I think there's a real concern in our space of this idea of we're the everything. Well, are you really able to do service and support and projects and security and patching and data governance and BCIO and threat hunting and incident response and vulnerability management? And like the list goes on. And I think IT providers and nerds, we're like, yeah, I'd love to learn everything. That's what we are. We're generalists, right? The IT guys are generalists. We love digging into everything. But I think there's a lot of value in saying, this is the line where I know I want somebody else to be responsible, and that protects me because they're paying attention to the stuff I'm missing. And so I love this idea of getting us together and saying, where can we complement each other? And I think you're seeing that in the mid market. The mid market's really starting to say, I want a provider that's managing service, and I want a different provider that's making sure the doors are
Yeah,
locked.
the hitman's bodyguard.
I'm-
Like it's totally logical, and they're not going to steal your lunch. They're not going to steal your printer fixing lunch. No, they're not.
right, right.
I think Nathan, you put it best when a while back you called it co-opetition. When we,
Yes.
when we can find other people in the room that can, because there's some deep dive. I don't have a white hacker on staff that just literally, I know some, and all they do is sit there and try and mess with things or break in some doors or sit in someone's parking lot and try and hack their Wi-Fi for fun. Like that's kind of. I'd prefer that you do have an MSSP that's pretty deep.
But I am not averse to the idea of a smaller MSP calling itself an MSP with security services. I don't mind if they
Yep.
call themselves an MSSP. I don't mind.
Right.
Well, do you
That
do you
Yeah.
think? do you think you would have to do like, so for instance, if I'm serving a company of 25 people that's doing design work, how important is it that they need a SOC? Or can we just install basic layers of security just to provide that they really don't have anything pertinent other than their, account information that we need to get to, or that would be hackable, right? So backups and all those things that we can do standardized.
Yeah, if you can deal
And
with backup poisoning, then yeah.
exactly. It's the level of what the need as well. So I get that.
And
What?
the other facet with the events, obviously, I organize events, and therefore I like to have fun with the questions and fun with the topics. There is a level of research, but there's also a level of, do you know what? Why not try this? Okay. So
Hmm.
lately, I've been saying, do you know what? What if the most exciting projects are mega projects? Because we're always saying there's not enough budget, there's not enough money. So I've thrown in a couple of panels with people who are running mega projects, data center mega projects, maybe energy mega projects. And lo and behold, they go, yeah, I've got the money, but I still have the same problems, right? But I still think that's a fun conversation to have, and injecting a little bit of my own personality, albeit through a topic, I think is a fun thing to do.
Oh, I think it's great, and I think that, you know, there's a digital transformation thing that happens too with these larger businesses. And Brandon, you've been around this. The
Yeah.
500 to 2,500 person companies, they want three separate things. They want somebody to, support their users. Sometimes that's internal, sometimes that's external, but you need somebody to answer Outlook's broken questions. That has to be covered.
No,
They need somebody making sure everything's secure on the other side.
well,
But in the
I do have
middle,
clients like that right now, where in the mid market per se, advanced services or something where they already have an existing IT team, and maybe they're trying to save cost on that realm, but they literally have, like, I remember when we thought at some points when we're trying to work out this realm is like, oh, we're migrating our servers to they moved data centers and they're hosted somewhere else, and they're an MSP kind of like us. Like, oh, we're out the door, right? Nope, they're over here managing the servers, and they'll let us know if anything happens, and we'll fix it. It's really interesting the way that they do like to put it in the bucket.
they break it up.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. But they do have, like you call it, mega projects, where they're like, hey, we have
It's long
500
term,
servers in a data center,
right?
and we need to get out of this data center contract for whatever reason. We don't like them. Our lawyers decided we can't work with them anymore. So we now have to move 500 servers, or we're moving 1,500 endpoints from on-prem AD to intra AD and Intune, and we have to migrate 1,500 users. That's a mega project. That is 4,000 hours worth of work for somebody. Now, it may be a combination of internal IT and third parties and automation, and you know, we're going to do 500 of those machines by giving them new machines and not migrate them, but the other 1,000 we have to migrate. But these projects I've been involved in a few. They're really interesting. They're fun. They're complicated. They're transformational. And they're these moments where, when it's done, the business is in a different spot. And I think they are really cool to talk about, because I think there's lessons to be learned in that process that trickle down to other size businesses. So it's great stuff. So why don't you tell us about the upcoming events you're hosting here in the States? I know you have events all over the world, and but in the next couple of weeks you're going to be doing some things in person. So why don't you plug those a little bit?
Well, thanks. And let me tie it into what we're trying to achieve with the narrative as well, and to make it exciting, rather than yo come to the event, which of course would be lovely if you did. Um, we do a virtual series geographically focused around the world and around different parts of the states, and one of our most favorite geographies is Denver. So next week on Tuesday, we're having a meetup in Darcy's Bistro in the Denver Technology Center. I know that's excellent for people in the DTC, and I've heard that it's not amazing for people coming from Boulder, but it's still going to be a lovely location. Now, the Phoenix event, it is part, yes, MSS Forum hosted this time at Phoenix Nap, a data center that focuses on bare metal cloud. That's kind of their thing at the moment. But the wider event is about convergence. And what I kind of found exciting, and it did annoy some service providers, was the way in which different security verticals have found different excuses to talk to each other. When people talked about security convergence a decade, 2 decades ago, many were imagining, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was a single career path? And they used this analogy, which is totally, in my opinion, unfitting. They say you don't start as an oncologist and work your way back to being a GP. Like, no, that's not that does not chime with the security sector. It matters that you have grown up in this very specific security environment.
Yep.
You know, do you have special forces experience? Are you a bodyguard? In which case, yes, you might be able to become a developer, but that's a very different career. And equally, are you in FM? Are you in loss prevention? Are you in IT? Are you in IT security? There's so many different verticals. So next week, on Thursday, the 15th, we have our 8th annual forum that essentially talks about how to have better conversations with stakeholders, why to talk to them, how to integrate them into, let's say, your offering. And over the years, this has become a lot more relevant because when we first started introducing the idea of an MSP bundling CCTV, access control, and biometrics, because they look after the network anyway, if you're going to make them install such a new system, many people pushed back and said, I hate it. I hate the responsibility. I hate everything about it. I don't want to touch it. And lo and behold, more people are now seeing the lucrative aspect
Mm-hmm.
of such partnerships. And the enterprise MSSPs are, believe it or not, using manned guarding as a way in to deliver more lucrative contracts. Right? There are really, really big players that are doing that. And there are traditional physical security managed security service providers that do traditional man guarding and they use cybersecurity as a shoehorn for their more lucrative man guarding. I guess I'm throwing a lot of things there, but what I mean to say is people should definitely come down to Phoenix next week because we're really trying something new beyond hi, RMM tool is amazing. XDR tool, yes, I love it. It's supposed to be different.
Yeah,
Well,
I love
what
it,
would
and I
you?
think go ahead, Brandon.
I'm sorry, Nathan. I'm intrigued. I'm trying to listen here, and I'm new to the Pelham realm. So, Pelham, what would you say that like if I had people sign up or who are you specifically looking for to actually show up to your event, either here in Phoenix or here in Denver? Which I'm in the Denver tech center. That's fantastic. But who do you want to come, and what would they get out of it?
Okay, so especially for the Denver event, which is just a meetup in a bistro, but specifically the MSS forum on the 14th, I'm looking for MSPs and MSSPs and security engineers to come together to literally discover how do we improve that third-party end customer security relationship. How can we look at a wider variety of things that we might be able to bundle beyond what we are bundling? And that's often uncomfortable because they're like, well, why should I bundle insurance? Why should I take a rider on an insurance policy? I don't know, right? But actually, that is a debate to be had. And with the wider convergence event, yes, we have a corporate security community because I do a lot with the physical security, corporate security world. But we also have an end customer and a third party MSP, MSSP community coming down. So that's really what I'm looking to do. And really, if you're an engineer wanting to speak truth to power, then the event's for you. If you are an MSP owner looking to bundle new and innovative solutions or find new partnerships, then the event is also for you. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Rather than, by the way, in the future we will only have one career path and it will be called risk, which I don't really like.
I have a lot of apprentices coming in the door, and they're like, I want to do IT security. What does that mean? So
Right.
I love when you guys say that because maybe you should do your research and figure out which path you want to head down.
Many paths.
Yeah. Yeah. I like a lot of what you're hitting on too with the security, because I think our space is quickly converging, like you said, of you've got a if you have a a compliance framework you're attesting to, most of them talk about physical security. Great, you've got the world's greatest cybersecurity, but your servers are in an unlocked closet in a public space. Like that's not good cybersecurity. Physical security matters, right?
Yeah.
Are people badging in? Do you know who's coming and going and why? Are you keeping a log of who was there? That line is very blurry already. And then I think on top of that, you talk about what are we talking about with risk these days? It's all about identifying risk. Is that physical risk? Is that, you know, business continuity and disaster recovery? We talked last week about that of a couple weeks ago about CrowdStrike and how it exposed that these businesses have an IT problem, but really they have a business continuity problem. They couldn't run their business when one key component failed. They didn't have the right thoughts put into redundancy. Does that mean they need to run multiple antivirus vendors, or they need to have redundant systems, or a backup, or a failover? There was a conversation about Delta suing CrowdStrike. I'm seeing a lot of articles that said what Delta's really mad about is they outsourced and cut their IT budget so hard that when this event happened, they didn't have the ability to be agile and react. Other businesses got back up and running because they had the resources available. Delta was running such a tight IT shop that they had no margin for error, and when this hit, they were in trouble. Again, that's risk. That's not an IT problem in some ways. That's a business problem. And that physical security and that cybersecurity, I think about a lot of our executives for our customers. They have physical security concerns, but man, their personal IT estates are usually a nightmare. And that's not covered by internal IT usually, but they've got Google accounts and Apple accounts and iPhones and iPads. And like we had a customer get compromised because his wife liked to check his corporate email, and her personal phone got compromised, and so they used that to get into his corporate email. And you're like the layers of security, physical security to cybersecurity and risk and convergence are very real. That's going to continue to accelerate.
But I think the story of risk appetite, it is the hardest conversation to have as an MSP or an MSSP. You can't go, hey
Yes.
customer, what do you want me to not protect? Like you can and you have to do that, but like it's the awkward conversation. But equally, for the uninitiated in cybersecurity or managed service provider land, they may not realize that a lot of physical threats are very, very, very unlikely. And then other ones are very, very likely.
Yes.
And then it depends if it's really likely. Do you have a hierarchical network whereby that individual, if compromised, can give the keys of the kingdom? If so, address that. And you may find that that person is now less vulnerable to kidnap and ransom, for example. There are ways around it. Just like in the cybersecurity space, a lot of people are putting the what's the polite way, but it removes the data pin from the USB, and you stick it on the end, and it protects the USB when it goes in. Okay, if you're going to DEF CON, certainly people will have set up that wonderful trap for you. But if you stick it in the back of the plane seat, it's not really going to be a bad thing, unless you're worried about state-sponsored things going right at you or the.
Sure.
But it's about risk appetite at the end of the day, which is why I'm excited to do these events with the MSP, MSSP community, because it's a business question. If it made business sense, you can bundle it.
You're right. You're right. I do. I like you're not wrong. I think half the day, like it's the MSS or the MSSP is a real thing, because really nowadays half of the things that we're, I can't. How can I pronounce this? I'm sorry. I'm trying to say words here. 13 years ago, I wasn't really spouting security as much as I am now, right? So it really has to be bundled into the MSP to say, I'm not only going to take care of your computer needs, I'm now going to take care of your security.
However, and this came up in a number of things, can one call oneself a secure MSP anymore? I say it's the Chris Rock joke. I don't know if many people know the Chris Rock joke, but it's he mocks someone saying, "I take care of my kids." He's like, "You're supposed to. It's not a bragging point."
Right. It's true. But to what extent? And that's where your risk comes in.
It's amazing.
How much risk are you willing to take before you have to level up to the next piece? So I'm excited to come to the event. I'm excited to see how we can cooperate, coexist. I like it.
Yeah. And there are loads of things you can sparkle to get people's imagination going. And yeah, I'm not fully immune from, giving people a bit of sizzle. Like, I do give you fanciful scenarios. What if this crazy thing happened? Yeah, people need that to sink their teeth into it. But I think it should be more based in, why would I have permission to speak to that function? What purpose? And again, I feel this should happen more in the wider channel event land.
Right.
But you know, that's
So
just me.
I know we're running out of time here, Pelham, but I have kind of one last question. I know some of these events are focused on MSSPs, MSPs, security people. Can you tell me like maybe something we could tell a business a director, a CEO, owner, something along those lines that makes these decisions? How would they find a good MSSP or MSP that is secure? What kind of things could they do to get there?
It is a good question. I think it would have to be on referral. I think honestly, you've
Hmm.
got to find a referral, because if you found an MSP that has ticked all the boxes and has apparently not had a breach, well, they it's just not yet. Um, I think you need to think, what is my level of technical expertise as an end customer? Are they speaking to my level of expertise? Because that's often a sign of intelligence. I know there's probably another word for it, but if if the person on the other end of the phone comes at you with lots and lots of technical jargon without realizing that you're a baker and you run a bakery, do they understand themselves, or is that a pre-scripted um, sort of statement? Maybe that's another good way to look at it, to see to what extent they've understood your business and how technical it is. And then I suppose the assumption is that you will be breached, so you do need to think about backup disaster recovery. You do need to think about insurance, but then the question is insurance just compliance? Is it going to do anything? Because if you've lost your business, a bit of money, and we've all seen business interruption insurance not paying out for a very interesting scenario that happened a few years ago. Um, so, so yeah, no magic bullet, but referral, and think about the questions they're asking you.
Um,
Hmm.
Another question I have for you: if you're an MSS or MSSP, right? Would you ever not take a client or fire a client because they're not willing to take the steps and mitigate risk, leaving you vulnerable
Yes,
for yeah, okay, you get what I'm saying.
you have to.
So you
You
you,
have to.
you turn them away. I would and say, look, you're going to put my name on saying we're the ones keeping you secure and you're not following the rules, and yeah, I can't stand for that, or stand I can't put my stamp of approval on that.
Yeah, you have to, and there may be some funny contractual things you've got with other clients in a multi-tenancy context that preclude you, because lawyers are putting more interesting clauses into contracts lately.
Yeah,
I don't know
yes,
if you
yeah,
noticed that, and there's
I
some
have.
really egregious terms. And I think someone sent me something to say, you promise to indemnify us from everyone else that you do business with and anything they do wrong. And I said, and how would I indemnify you for that? And they said, well, through insurance. So I phoned the insurer. The insurer talked to the underwriter, and they're like, no, we cannot underwrite an unnamed group of immense number of third parties for a transgression against something. No. So look specifically at the contract, because whilst that is a customer you do want to turn away, by the way, if they send you something like that, but there are loads of interesting clauses that prevent you doing business with another client that would get you into trouble, much like modern slavery laws, much like sustainability goals. There's a ton of things that on top of, by the way, that client will give you a bad hair day, that you should pay attention to.
Okay. I know I could keep going, but I'm gonna try. Phelim, if one customer A, it got breached, and they sent an email to customer B, or customer C over here, and customer C pays out all this money to a fake account that was breached, who's at fault?
I don't know.
Good answer.
That's one for the lawyers.
Just, I mean, these are scenarios that we run into, and it could
Oh
be an
man.
open-ended question. Um,
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap this up, Pelham, but I'm gonna ask you one last question. And this is something we're trying to get consistent with all of our interviewees and people we bring on. What's your favorite restaurant?
Juno, I did very much like PF Chang's for a long time. I really like the duck wraps, but we don't have many PF Chang's over here, so I don't know. I'd like to see more of the PF Chang fun time.
I appreciate it. Nathan, you got anything else?
Well, Phelim, thank you for joining us. We'll throw links to the events into our notes and when we post it on LinkedIn. Hope to see a few people join us in Denver and Phoenix. Looking forward to seeing everybody, and hopefully, I'm looking forward to just great conversations. It's always fun to see everybody and dig deep on this stuff. That it's always stimulating, and I always learn stuff from just learning from all these other smart people you pull into a room. That's always an opportunity to learn. So, thank you for joining us. Thank you for including me in your event. It's been a privilege and a pleasure. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you, Pelham, and hopefully we can have you back on. To the rest of our listeners, don't forget to subscribe, like, do all the fun things, leave us comments, and we will see you next time.